to the Mortal Realms, an Age of Sigmar story phase. Grab your hammer so we can clear a path through the chaos and forge our own narratives in the Age of Sigmar. Your allies through the 1,000 doors this episode are...
I'm Davey, and I think spending most of your life living in the Thieves Paradise sounds pretty coolio.
But I'm Paul. Hey guys, what do you call a flat rainbow?
I don't know.
Arcless.
Oh, fair enough. And I'm Aaron, and hey John Milton, you might find what you've been looking for in the Thieves Paradise. In this episode, we are discussing Thieves Paradise by Nick Horth. Callis who? Toll what now? Today we're here to follow the breakout star from Horth's slice of the Mortal Realms, and the elven treasure hunter has stolen more than priceless artifacts this time. She's stolen our hearts.
We know who your character is.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious.
Thump, 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 thump. Hi, everybody. And by everybody, I mean you two standing directly across from me.
And the listeners.
And the listeners. Yes, hello.
Listeners.
What are you wearing right now? How are you guys
got some
doing?
Sigmarite going on.
I'm good. I'm a little more hot and bothered now. I don't know.
Have you done any hobby since we last recorded?
Yes, some. Some of it has been planning. So it's been a while since I was doing a bunch of hands-on sort of hobby. But I was looking at the Corvus Cabal. Love those models. And then I have like all this terrain and bits that I just haven't done anything with for years. And I was thinking of like some sort of grand conversion thing where I like make a so one was combining a Beastman Hearthstone with some trees that I have and trying to make the big sort of trophy tree for the Corvus Cabal. And then another was using some of this terrain I have and using bits and making almost like a roost or a nest for the Corvus and have, maybe just try and like build my own, like, hey, you want to, play against the Corvus with this home field advantage or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, that's just daydreaming right now.
Yeah.
And who knows if that will become something, but it was fun to think about.
Yeah, I've definitely had that thought as well of doing a board that is your home roost or your base.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do challenge battles, invite them in or something like that. I don't know. That's a cool idea. But
yeah.
I have pulled a rotor and I've done most of my hobby through purchasing. So I bought Tome of Champions. I got the 2 last White Dwarfs. I forgot to pick the last one up. And then I got the Age of Sigmar Objectives box as well. And I also made a gingerbread house.
Oh,
so,
sure.
That was fun.
And did you fill it with models?
I didn't, but I made it kind of look like Stormkeep. So
excellent.
I had fun with it.
And when you say the objectives, which one, you mean like the floating rock and the swords?
One that was in Tome of Champions.
Yeah, perfect. Smart.
That's a part of the scenario.
That was probably my highlight of that book when I opened it up. I'm like, oh, I have all that stuff. Sweet.
Doesn't that happen every time you open up a book?
No, you would most of the time, but not every time. And it's increasing in frequency as well. So there's that. I have to buy the December White Dwarf because it's got Gotrek Warcry rules in there. And if you look up there, I just bought them.
Oh,
look at that.
Add them to the collection. I mean, I'm having a sale. I can't walk in and not buy some.
Did you have to go into a volcano to go buy them?
I should have.
Yeah. You went into a spiritual volcano.
Yeah, sure. Anyways, what have I been up to? I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. And
you're erupting.
I don't know what it's called. It's like the Hallowed Storm Throne. Apparently, I know exactly what it's called.
You do.
So I just put that together. That's kind of cool. It's like a little unique piece that came out relatively recently. Folks, you may remember a long time ago that they released a War Scroll card for the Hallowed Storm Throne, but they never released the model, and I was freaking out because, gosh darn it, how could you? So I was very relieved that they released it, and I feel like it kind of maybe is missing some people, but everybody who's going to buy their Dominion of Sigmar type terrain have already bought all their stuff, and so like this is sort of a second wave, and I'm glad that it came out. I'm glad that I have it, and it looks pretty cool. It's bigger than I thought it would be.
I'm glad that GW made something just for you to fulfill that hole that you had in your collection.
Well, what you don't realize is that in my head, everything they make is just for me, and it's pretty irrelevant how it affects the world at large. But that is pretty neat, so I'm still working on all that. So I'm getting close. It's almost done. Getting put together, that is. But that's enough of that. Hey, guys, we're going to talk about a story today. And a shorter one because, man, we have been putting out some content lately. It's the end of the year. Things are busy. So we're tackling a novella, a nice short appetizer type story that we could breeze through pretty quickly. And we're going to talk about Thieves Paradise, if you haven't gathered that already. by Nick Horth. Another in his, there's not really a term for what his series is, but following those characters that he's been introducing sort of in the greater Callis and Toll.
So there's got to be a word for that. What is that?
I'm not sure, but I'll
It's
tell you
on the
what.
tip of my tongue.
Let's before we get too far, let's jump into the story phase. So
All
it's
right.
nice and official.
The story phase. In the story phase, we delve into the stories, characters, creatures, and environments of the 9 realms. Freed from prison in exchange for her aid, elven treasure hunter Shev Arkless must recover an item of extraordinary power. With the aid of a deranged warden and a long-dead thief, she must navigate the Thieves Paradise. But the dead will not relinquish their treasures easily.
Guys, we're in the spoiler-free section now. Maybe even my favorite section. Let's talk about some facts, some factoids about this this novella. I don't want to downplay it. It actually is. I mean, it's a sizable little story.
Yeah,
here.
it's not short.
Yeah, it's not short. It doesn't fit into our pocket realms, which you can find more at our Patreon at www.themortalrealms.com/Patreon. So let's check out maybe the when. When does this story take place? Y'all got thoughts?
This was interesting. Like, I feel like we've had a number of stories where we had to kind of, I think it takes place at this point, or you know, like we haven't had clear markers, and so we've had to kind of extrapolate where it's been landing.
Mm-hmm.
This one, it's very clear. Necroquake has occurred. It's specifically referenced at there, so like people are talking about it, so they know what it is. However, the Lethis is still it's still intact, I guess, is the roughly word I'm looking for.
Sure.
It hasn't been assaulted as happened, as we know, in Forbidden Power.
Mm-hmm.
So we've occurred in between the Necroquake and Forbidden Power.
Yeah, because I believe it's referenced that Lethis is under threat.
Right.
So-
They think something's coming,
Yeah.
but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
That's a very specific little piece of time.
It's rare that we know the before and the after, like
Yeah.
where it slots in between.
Refreshing, you might
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you very much. One, I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that like Nick Horth is also like a game's like background writer, right? Like he writes for GW proper,
Battletome.
whatever the difference is.
I didn't realize this.
Yeah. So I think, but like he's steeped in the whens of the story, the larger story, as it relates to the game, and sort of the releases. So I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Well, I think that's fair to say that that's something about this book that is interesting, is that it is written by a Battletome author, right? We do have Black Library authors that don't write Battletomes, and there is sometimes a difference of feeling because they do tend to have a little bit more of the detail and the specificity when we're talking to people who are in the studio themselves. When we read Gloom's Bite by Andy Clark, you knew that the specificity was there because he had written the Battletome.
Yeah.
Right? And so even though this is a novella, it's not like a throwaway. This is built into the larger work of Nick Horth.
Well, that's an interesting point because you can see it when something pops up in this book without doing spoilers, but he's very clear on, a unit on the tabletop. Like he's very specific about how that looks and is accurate to, and like how that figure looks and all that sort of thing. Like it's somebody who's clearly aware of what that figure looks like.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I can't wait to find out more.
All right.
Furthermore, if we're talking about the when, we don't often do like sequels. I guess we do it on occasion, but this also squarely takes place after previous Black Library books that we read, and we talk about the Horth stories, the Horth-iverse. I guess I don't know what we want to call it.
The collected work of
the
Horth.
collected work
Horth
of Horth.
Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, exactly. But
HCU.
this does take place, and it fortunately, this is a sequel to some books that we've actually read and covered on the in fact, it's almost the only series that we have at multiple entries on, now that I think about
That's
it.
a fair point.
But not maybe one of the only. I'll say I don't know if it is the only.
I'd say the most significant other thing was just doing Realm Gate Wars,
Sure.
which
Yeah,
Eric
yeah.
and I did.
True. But so this does take place after Silver Shard, which is however many episodes ago that was, which in and of itself took place after City of Secrets.
Sure.
So it's not a spoiler thing to say that if you want to get the full picture of who this character is, it's probably worth reading that Silver Shard or listen to our episode, because man, we go line by line by that thing.
Such a good job.
We did such a great job.
Yeah, and we did City of Secrets too, didn't we?
Yep, one of my earlier ones, so I'm not going to vouch for that one.
Does that qualify us for like the Horth fan club?
I think so.
Well, he's already a close personal friend of Aaron.
Well, of course.
Close personal friend, Black Library author. Of
Dear,
course.
dear friend. Actually, I was going to harken back. If you want to find out more about just what Nick Horth does, listen to one of the maybe the 2 Stormcast episodes ago. He was just on it, and he talked about a lot of the stuff that he does in the studio.
Yeah, he had one early on, and then he has another one that just came out as well.
Yeah. So we've got our when. Let's talk about the where. Where are we at?
We are in Shyish.
Shh, not so loud.
Don't talk about it.
He'll find us.
So we are in the realm of Shyish, the realm of death, and we are in unconquered lands. I think that's a pertinent point.
Sure.
So we are actually in some underworlds. And there's basically 2 major locations that it takes place
Let
in.
me pause you for a second. Unconquered by whom?
Unconquered by Nagash.
And
Chaos, Catacross, right? Or Chaos. Oh, that's true. Yep, yeah. Absolutely.
Which for the most part are, like, as far as I'm concerned, like the 2 big forces that are sort of tugging and pulling in that area. But no, we have ours either unclaimed or I guess the story does start in a city of Sigmar. But like,
sure,
I mean,
the majority of it takes place in a place that, and it's easy to assume that all of Shyish is either under Nagash's sway or under the sway of Chaos Invaders. And then we know there's a couple of Order outposts, right?
Sure.
But this is an example of how that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, it's very cool. And it's rare that we spend time in a very, I guess, fully realized underworld as well, and without getting into too much details.
Oh, absolutely.
But like, it's, I mean, you always talk about how Shyish is made of those underworlds, and they'll give you throwaway lines that, like, oh, this is an underworld that you go to if you believe this or that, or and given God. But like, I haven't seen many boots on the ground perspectives on what that even means. And this, not to get too far ahead of this is pretty enlightening, is to sort of see it done in this story.
That's a good point, because it feels like a sort of fundamental essence of what Shyish is, right? And we just haven't explored it as fully as we might have otherwise.
Well, it's one of my favorite things about the Age of Sigmar setting is the realm of death.
Yeah.
And this idea of the perpetual anything can happen.
Sure. Well, and not to belabor the point, but we see occasional cities, like the Sigmar cities, in death, and they would claim that these are in afterlives, but like there's never really any indication that that's true. Like,
for example, Lethis, right? Like Lethis is just a city. It's in death. We don't have any example, any description of what this afterworld was, right? It's in the Prime Innerlands, which theoretically at some point was an underworld, but we don't have any description of that. And this is not there, right? This is farther out. So it's not in the Prime Innerlands because we know that that's been conquered. It's not on the far out of outreaches of it because that's too wild magic to have humans live. So we're somewhere in that band in between, that temperate zone of the realm of death.
Yeah, a new territory for sure.
And we also, I think it's fair to say where we started. We started in a place called the Pit that is a jail. So that's kind of a new hook, new start here, right?
Where is the Pit?
In a city.
Just Lethis.
Oh, is it Lethis?
Yeah. Where I was going before is, let's talk about the Who. We've dropped her name a couple times now. Where the story is going to follow a secondary character. No, probably a first point of view character from the last book. I think we got a point of view in Silver Shard, but this is Shev Arkless. Shevanya Arkless.
Shev Flat Rainbow.
Yeah, she is an elven, I guess, treasure hunter, archaeologist, perhaps. Maybe grave robber on occasion.
Rapscallion.
Yeah, perhaps.
I'm going to go with Rapscallion.
She's a elven.
Indiana Jones.
Nailed it.
Yeah,
no,
but it doesn't belong in a museum. It belongs in her pocket.
I'm not going to say that she's an elven Indiana Jones. I'm going to say that she's an elven Tomb Raider.
Okay,
I'm going with that.
I don't know Tomb Raider that well, but I believe it. Or is Indiana Jones a human Shevanya Arkless?
Yeah.
Possibly in Silver Shard.
Well, and so she was introduced in Silver Shard, correct?
Absolutely.
As I recall, I think she's the first person you encounter.
Yeah, okay. So then definitely a first
Shard.
person character, and where she's been sort of co-opted, coerced into, joining an expedition. And in a way, kind of similar to, I mean, not dissimilar to this.
You're not wrong.
You get a sense that she's kind of a character that would prefer to be on her own, and yet we always seem to find her in company that she would prefer not to be in.
Yeah.
And this is the story.
Every time she thinks she's out, they pull her back.
Pull her back in.
Elven treasure hunter, archaeologist, always getting co-opted and doing the stuff that. But so she, I think the Indiana Jones or Tomb Raider comparison is apt. I bet you probably Horth would agree that's maybe some sort of inspiration.
Well, I know specifically for Silver Shard, he mentioned that it was intended to be an Indiana Jones type adventure.
I see. Gotcha. Well, and the reason she's always getting, again, shanghaied into these missions is because she's a capable Tomb Raider treasure hunter type character, and that she's got skills. She can infiltrate places. She knows how to keep her eyes out for traps and things. She's got that elven grace. So who better to, I guess, follow on this path, on this adventure?
Well, and I think what is the definition of her character to me is that she is just intentionally curious, right? She wants to know more, and once she knows more, she wants to know more. Like it's not a careless curious. It is an informed. It is a intelligent curious. And that's a really interesting way of looking at a character.
Do you see yourself in her a little bit?
Oh, no. She's far too graceful to be me.
No.
I'd like to come back around to that later. It's an interesting observation.
But we sort of alluded to the fact that she would prefer to work alone, but in this story, the exact opposite is true, and she has to join a group of other like-minded individuals, or at least like gold individuals, and so she has to team up with a a witch hunter, not the witch hunter that we know and love from the Callis and Toll series, not Toll, but another one whose jurisdiction sort of covers the Lethis area, and he's sort of the one who enlists her aid. We'll talk more about him. He's got a human bodyguard, big old sword, pretty gruff and burly. At one point, they link up with how do they phrase it? A mechano-arcane engineer of the Ironweld College.
I think I want to just pause here for a second, because Eric literally pasted this out and put it in the Discord, right? This is a new term, a mechano-arcane engineer, right? So this is kind of something new that's brought into the universe. So if you want to know more about it, read the book and then come listen to the spoilers section, because it's definitely interesting to me.
Well, and we can talk about what we may know about it, but this is sort of another allusion to this mechanical cog fort type stuff that permeates the order-based Sigmar, civilizations. If we don't see something like this, maybe not him specifically, brought up in model form sometime soon, that's it. We're missing out. There's all sorts of stuff that are ripe from the picking that we can pull from these stories.
Yeah, I might call it steam etherpunk or something like that. It's not straight steampunk, it's not straight ether, it's not straight fantasy. It's a kind of a combination of the both.
It's only a matter of time.
And this is something that it has a theme that, as you said, has been repeating. We've heard about cog forts. There were marsh striders that were these mechanical constructions as well. There's a lot of different things that we have that are starting to fit into this category.
Agreed. And a few other bit characters that we're going to find out more about as we talk about the story. But that is for us to discover in the spoiler section. Are there any other whats that haven't been covered so far? It's she's a thief, treasure hunter. She's co-opted into a mission to go grab a treasure that we're going to talk about later. We're in Shyish.
So if we were going to categorize this book in a library, right, what section would it be under? Would this be
the Age of Sigmar section, the Horth-iverse section?
Would it be an adventure? Would it be a thriller? Would it be what kind of a book is this?
Heist book?
All right.
Yeah.
Davey, what are you thinking?
Not really a heist book.
It's not hitting the right notes for a heist book.
No, adventure.
It feels more adventure.
Yeah. But adventure could be anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. I guess we could try.
What's your answer, Paul?
I think adventure is a pretty good term for it. But I don't know.
High adventure. That's beyond compare.
That's kind of fair. High adventure. It is not a low fantasy Age of Sigmar book, right? It is a high fantasy. Gummy bears.
Paul's on board.
Bears.
Yeah.
It's definitely a high adventure. It has a lot of that high fantasy feel to it. And as opposed to some of the other books that are set perhaps farther back in the past, it does seem to be current with what's going on in the rest of the Age of Sigmar. So it definitely, not only does it seem to, it tells us exactly where it is in AOS, it seems to fit in that time scale as well. To me, that was something that jumped out about the book, is that it fits in between the Necroquake and Soul Wars.
Sure, I get you. I agree. Cool. So any other spoiler-free stuff we want to talk about? All right. So if no spoiler-free section, before we move to the spoiler section, give me a quick thought. Should people read this book?
Yes.
Paul thinks yes.
Yes. I enjoyed it. It is an exploration of the realm of death, and specifically one of the underworlds. I think that's fair to say up front, and I really enjoy that. That whole thing, that whole idea really appeals to me. And we do get a fully fleshed out underworld here.
What?
So
well, in a way, yes.
Yeah, so that's pretty sweet. And then I'm going to double down on my Silver Shard is like Indiana Jones, and this is a little bit more like Tomb Raider to me. So if you like that kind of a feel, I would definitely recommend it. If you've read the other two of Nick Horth's books and like them, I would definitely recommend it.
I'm not going to force you to pick apart the difference between Tomb Raider and Indiana Jones, but at some point I'd be interested in defining the differences. For me, I think it was not my favorite. I enjoyed it. I think it established some expectations that it did not meet for me. I think I was looking for the heist. I think it had some elements getting set up, and I was like, oh, yeah.
He's putting together a
heist
team.
Book. This is going to be great. And because it did not follow through, it ended up being adventure, which I feel like I've seen before, seen enough of. I was excited to have like a heist book in the Age of Sigmar, and it was not that. And so that's on me, perhaps, for developing some incorrect expectations. And I think that maybe flavored some of my assessments later on.
But he was putting together a team, though. Should have been a heist.
And now I really want a heist book.
Yeah.
I've had this thought before of how fun it would be to have a heist book set in AOS, but
it wasn't Reynolds going to write a heist book. Anyways,
that was my thought.
Did I like it? Yes, I think it would. Reynolds, still my best friend. I did like it. I would more strongly recommend folks who are into the other Nick Horth books to read this one. I think this is par for the course. Like this continues that trend, and I like that he's going wide rather than deep. Like, I feel like every story he makes it a point to introduce a number of interesting characters, and then he's found the ones that are worth telling more stories about, basically. And I think Chev falls into that bucket. I think that to Paul's point that it is very similar to Silver Shard. Like it hits similar notes. And then for those folks who haven't read those books, it's probably worth picking up one or two of them before you would start this one. I think not that you would be lost, but it would just inform some of the plot and inform the character a little bit. However, it may be worth doing so because I think maybe Davey alluded to it. At one point we said that you do learn a thing or two about Shyish, you do learn a thing or two about the underworlds, and if you wanted to get a sense of what it even meant to live in an underworld or like exist in an underworld, this paints a more clear picture than I can remember any other story doing. And I guess it introduces a character at one point that like sort of exemplifies that too. So I think per investment, it's a novella, so it's not too hard to burn through. I think it is probably worth it. Just be prepared. It's not a heist book, but again, more of that adventure type story. So
to your point, I do think you can read this novella standalone.
100%.
It will still stand up on its own legs. So
I just poo all over what I just said.
But I think if you read it without reading City of Secrets and Silver Shard, you are missing that depth of information that really informs the character.
Gotcha.
But that being said, if you don't have time to read all three, go ahead and read this novella.
Who does?
Yeah. Who would even?
Nobody in this room.
Listen to our previous episodes.
Everybody in this room.
We're the coolest. All right, let's jump into
the proud.
Let's jump into some spoilers, so we don't just keep beating around the bush. Hi everyone, it's Aaron, the lamest member of the Mortal Realms, here to check in and gauge your feelings on the story so far. You think it's something you'd like to read? You want to be spending most of your life living in a Thieves Paradise? Then go to the show notes and find a link to buy the book and get reading. We'll be here when you get back. And if you've already read the darn thing, then go review the darn thing on Amazon or Goodreads or wherever else. Prove to the world that you are not illiterate. Look, I'm just saying I've heard rumors is all. And finally, hey, you. Happy New Year. We here at the Mortal Realms have had a great 2019, and it was almost entirely due to our awesome listeners, just like you. I won't gush now. Go ahead and check out our holiday crossover episode if you haven't already, to hear all of the Mortal Realms hosts from all of our shows reflect and talk about what's in store for the future. And speaking of the future, the show after this should release around the 10th of February and a few days sooner than that for our Patreon patrons. And speaking of Patreon patrons, before that, we'll release another Pocket Realms with a special guest, so keep your ears open for that. Neato. That should do it. Let's get back to the show. Let's spoil the heck up out of this book. All right, so smash cut. We're in a jail, a black pit at the bottom of... What would that possibly be?
That was the smash cut.
Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah. The black pit. What was confusing, I can see how you'd be confused and not realize that we were in Lethis, because she refers to it as the Raven City repeatedly, but that is, Lethis is the Raven City.
Sure.
And Shev has been arrested and locked up because, I don't know, she broke into some noble person's house and tried to steal something.
Do we really know exactly how it happened, or are we kind of just like giving a hint?
Unimportant.
Yeah, in media res.
You're in a tavern and you meet some other people.
And apparently you're all best friends and willing to spend the next 20 levels of your life doing adventures.
Roll a d20.
Yeah. But she's chained up. She hears, people bawling outside her gates. But eventually she's visited by this. And okay, I don't know. That's just what jail is like, I assume. I've never been.
So there's a pit, right? Yeah. She's in complete darkness. So this is an interesting narrative way of describing her approach to this story, right? She knows nothing. Mm-hmm. She has no information. And somebody comes to the door that she doesn't know and says, hey,
yeah,
I
need
what
you.
He says.
My takeaway on this was the cities of Sigmar have some pretty terrible jails. So it's establishing this where, even the forces of order, even the more orderly forces of order, like we have the more savage ones like Idneth and
daughters.
But even the more civilized, organized ones, they're not so great sometimes. Like this is pretty. You need some prison reform up in. This is not great.
No, I'm legitimately. This is the darkest that we have seen the order be, and by proxy, right? This is the darkest that we've seen the Church of Sigmar be.
As usual, I will challenge your application of a superlative here.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
The Knights Excelsior have
that's what I was getting at. Yeah,
lame stuff.
Our Stormcast, and this is I don't know. I see a difference between the two. But that's just me.
I'm sure there's been plenty of witch hunters who've been lighting fools on fire.
Like, absolutely, but we haven't seen them in writing.
Oh, okay,
and I guess that struck me immediately of how.
At any rate, speaking of gnarly witch hunters, Amos Varen kicks the door and he just walks in and he comes bringing an offer to Shev. He says, "Hey, look, you get your freedom if because I got a job for you." Mm-hmm. And she snaps her fingers and says, "I'm in." No, but. Apparently there was this great archmage of an amethyst archmage who went rogue.
Yep.
And he set up this phylactery as necromancers often do. Oh no, I guess he's not a necromancer, he's an archmage. But he was defeated and they hid away this phylactery. But now we know that where things that were hidden are no longer hidden all that well post Necroquake, post sort of the storm vaults being revealed. And it turns out now we're a little concerned that maybe that phylactery isn't as safe as it used to be. So this Varen witch hunter thinks that Shev would be the perfect match for his little mission to go and retrieve that phylactery and ensure that it's safe, because he's worried that the forces of death or whoever are going to head in that direction and try to reclaim it.
I do like the idea that the Order of Vizier keeps files on all its prisoners as might be useful.
Sure.
It's the reason they keep somebody a prisoner instead of execution.
Yeah, this guy gives really good back rubs. I'm gonna keep that in mind.
Definitely listed as an asset here for sure.
Yep, exactly. And so he comes in. He's got this bodyguard of this shorter, like stockier woman, but like she's like ripped and can barely like fit in her armor in like a strong way. And so like between the two of them, they're quite an imposing pair. But Shev sees the writing on the wall. No, she doesn't. It's pitch black. She can't see anything. But she realizes that maybe this is her only opportunity to get out of Dodge, and heck, maybe there's a chance that she'll be able to escape later. So she agrees. I can't remember if there's any more coercion than that, but she's smart enough to know, where her budget.
Smart enough to know where the DM wants to send her.
Exactly. She knows where the story hooks are headed. And so they do that. So they They leave her in jail for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And then they come back, pick her up, and they head out, leaving Lethis. Honestly, this is all the extent of where we spend our time in Lethis. We don't really get to see much of it.
No.
They then are well, I guess who are they introduced to next? What's their mode of transportation? Because they need to journey into Shyish, into the deeper into the wilds, I suppose.
It's a mechanical spider.
It's not a hospitable land. Apparently, they need a set of wheels. Paul, tell me about it.
So it is referenced as a mechanical spider, but then clarified that it is basically this walking hand, right? If you were to take a like classical fantasy trope of having a hand, a phantasmical hand, but make it a mechano-arcane engineered
Got it in
hand,
one.
Yeah.
you would definitely come up to this idea of a mode of transportation. It's kind of an interesting way that he describes it, when he describes it to be just the digits moving around, and it's got a very kind of creepy way of walking. So we are introduced to this tiny compressed human that drops out and like covered in oil and dust, and is introduced to us as Master Boros.
Yeah. Hard of hearing, which he solves by like jamming a thing with hooks into his ear.
That's
Which is
creepy.
good,
Well, it's
gnarly.
like an audio phone that he literally, or what is that called? The ear trumpet? Like
Yes,
that he
yeah,
literally
ear trumpet,
swivels
yeah.
into
Think
his-
of an ear trumpet that has like fish hooks on it or
Yeah.
something like that. I'm like, why
Wait,
is that necessary?
They all don't?
Yeah.
And basically the implication is that the land that they are in is way too dangerous to travel across.
Sure.
So this is introduced as, quote, a safe mode of transportation across this area.
Quote who?
Well, I mean, to quote Varen. So they're introduced to Master Boros, and then they all climb inside this mechano-engineered hand.
Yep.
Into
Takes off.
Yeah.
It's a very lurching, unpleasant experience.
loud boilers, steam.
It takes a while. The show of how tough you are is just how long it takes you to become extremely nauseated by riding
Violently
this,
ill.
You know, so
And it's not if, it's when.
right. It starts out and you're like, oh, cool. The bodyguard, she's hanging in there.
Mhm.
By the end, even she's like ready to Rolf.
So there was it stated that it was like, oh, maybe this will take 6 days, but it took like 8 or 9. It took forever to cross this barren land. And everybody's uncomfortable except for Master Boros.
He lives for this nonsense.
Apparently.
Yeah.
He's just super excited about his invention. This is
Cheerfully
apparently the
oblivious.
first of its
Yeah.
kind. He wants to deploy it in thousands to the Free Guild as a wonderful mode of transportation, defensible, basically you get a used car salesman that'll do everything, right? Like, it's basically what we have here. So
He slaps the side of it and says, you can fit so many adventuring parties in this baby.
exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, and so they make the trip, barely, as they sort of reach their destination, as all come sort of tumbling and piling out, sick to the gills, green in the gills, and trying to recover for it. But they end up in this sort of outpost coastal town called Sorrow Point, I want to say.
Yeah.
That feels right.
This is described pretty well.
Yeah.
It's basically built into a cliffside, if I'm not mistaken. It is just this gloomy, dark, depressing area.
So then why would they call it Sorrow Point?
I don't know. It feels like it's a fitting name to me. I don't know. But they have this intricate network of nets and hooks on the harbor itself. And apparently there are undead that climb out of this ocean and try and attack the city. And so they basically have clogged them up into this, row of bodies.
I like this. This feels very practical in like the Walking Dead sort of thing, where they can't think about, like, we're not talking about bone reapers that are, cognizant thinking. We're talking about automatons. So some nets. That'll do the trick.
I mean, just need to slow him down. Like, somebody's watching. We'll take him out eventually.
Yeah. And so that is lining the harbor, and then the harbor itself is filled with all these ships. So we are introduced to this Dwarven captain.
Oh man, he has a name.
Allode.
Hello there. David, tell me about it.
He is in the style of, as they sometimes like to do in these, is like this guy's kind of like grungy and gross and whatever, like he's rough and tumble. But he has this steamship that is really like the people looking at it are like, is that going to manage to go 20 yards, much less, as far as we need to go? Like it's
like a rusty bathtub.
Ramshackle, I think is a good word for it. But I think he's kind of like a little bit of a pirate, a little bit of a privateer on this. But that's what they need to cross this sea. So that's what they're planning for.
So they're making for the Latchkey Isle, right?
Yeah, I guess we haven't talked about it. Yeah, where are they headed?
So the Latchkey Isle is an underworld, and
no,
it is in a dangerous place. Obviously, as every MacGuffin basically is, and so they need to hire this specific captain because he can get them there. Right, is the idea, and so Chev is very thankful to be landing on the decks of this boat out of that stupid hand, and finally to be rid of it. And lo and behold, what happens? But the hand itself is lowered onto the ship itself, and Master Boros is now accompanying them. And that was a rather amusing moment for me.
Sure, and then he's barking orders to all the other Dwarven, who he's like, "No, you got to package it up just right. Like that thing is super delicate, obviously, and we're going to stow it on the ship." That raised no red flags for me at the time. While reading it, it did not occur to me that would have any importance later whatsoever.
Oh, of course not.
Are you being sarcastic?
No, not at all.
Oh, really?
No, I'm just like, I don't know. Yeah, sure. I mean, the guy's protective of his hand. Reminiscent of the Thing from the Addams Family. I don't know if now is where I'll leave it in, or maybe
I don't know if I've already referenced this.
Yeah,
it's up to future me.
It's up to decide. Oh God. And so they set off. This ship crewed by a bunch of Duarden and their Duarden captain. Heading off for this Latchkey Isle, the home of the phylactery that they're after. They go. They're sailing for a while. They think that it's only going to be a matter of days. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a particularly long trip. But a couple of days in, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe everyone, Chev, is starting to miss the land a little bit, because this trip is almost as bad as the hand trip.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of the less than desirable transportation method. But as they're sort of traveling, she notices that she's not the only one who's not seeming all that well. But as she spends more time with the witch hunter Varen, she's sort of getting the impression that he's taking it a little hard too. She noticed it in the hand where everyone was sort of getting sick, but even on the ship, it seems like his health is kind of deteriorating a little bit. He's fading. He's not as strong as he used to be, and so that obviously raises an eyebrow for
grasping
her.
at a satchel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. At this point, we probably realize that he's got something clutched close to his chest. That's probably nothing. It's probably no big deal.
Not.
But it's around this time that the ship is rocked and the crew lets out a call, and apparently we are under attack because you just can't travel these dangerous seas without someone knocking on your boat door.
This was a little unclear to me exactly how this is happening. It sounded like skeletal assailants are climbing up through the mechanisms, through the
they were coming in through the propulsion, through the engine.
But were they swimming? How did they get to the top of the sea? I
think the implication was that no one could do it because they have to breathe, but because they don't have to breathe, they can fit into the bilge pump, they can fit into the propulsion system, which consisted of a large cistern of water.
Who could have anticipated? Certainly not experienced privateers
Dwarven sailors. Of course not, yeah.
Well, but at the same time, these aren't necessarily the mindless skeletons, but rather they were sort of under direction and orders from a focusing point, which is to say this necromancer, atop a giant sea leviathan creature. The word kraken's not used, but I got some of that impression.
But it's for sure dead. Slash undead.
Yeah. Not alive. Check. But yeah, so the boat is attacked. Skeletons coming up out of nowhere, rusty weapons, necromancer on a giant leviathan, tentacles all over the place. Paul wants to say something so bad.
Is this a Heartkraken?
I don't know. What do you think?
There's nothing to say that it isn't.
Perfect.
And there's Paul to say that it is.
Well, a Heartkraken is a sky thing. We've heard about this in the Caradron Overlord. But it's something that's dead, so we don't know if this doesn't specifically reference that it is a sea kraken. It is just this thing with tons of tentacles.
I think it's a wibble wobble nonsense monster.
Fair. But if you know what a Heartkraken is, something like that.
Okay.
Right?
I suppose.
Yeah. No need for it to be. It could just be a water monster.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
So now the ship has some defenses. There's like fore and aft, I don't know, guns, and they're not harpoon guns, but they're firing on the monster. They're trying to fire on the necromancer, but the monster's defending it. People are getting stabbed left and right by rusty weapons from the skeletons. Things are not looking good for both the crew of the ship, but then also our party. But fortunately, let's bring it back to what we were just talking about. Master Boros says,
Wait. There's a solution at hand.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, you gotta hand it to him. He had some forethought, and he's like, I got just the thing for this.
Thought.
Yeah. Open her up. Let's get it back in that hand. And he's excited. He's jazzed. I'm surprised he didn't lead with this, actually.
Yeah.
And they fire up the old Mechano Arcanum hand. It unfurls, and they drive it into the sea.
Yeah. He has some moments where he's like, it's probably not going to work. We're probably going to drown.
Sure.
But, what else? It's pretty exciting.
Yeah,
theoretically, my invention might work.
Yeah.
Better than being stabbed, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I think it runs to the edge of the ship and does like a hop, skip, and a jump. Like it's a weird leap into the ocean.
Also, let's be clear that the necromancer was targeting the witch hunter.
Yes.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was definitely hey, you, I want you, and that was
want
not
me.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that was not happening. And then they got in the hand and escaped and leave this ship to its doom. Basically, they're just like, we got this like other mode of transportation.
For what it's worth, I think the captain was already dead at this point.
Yes,
so
you're right.
everybody else didn't even have a name.
So was he
really
wearing
cool.
a red shirt, or did I miss?
No,
that
everyone
part?
else was wearing a red shirt.
was.
Yeah. But the hand leaps into the sea. It turns out it is
A submersible.
buoyant. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and all waterproof. He pounds the sides. He's like, oh yeah, I didn't expect this to hold. I expected a trickle, but nope, it's pretty good.
Which I guess is the explanation for why they didn't just do this in the first place.
Yeah, I suppose.
Why was this not always the plan?
No one here has an answer.
Yeah.
But yeah. Touche. And they head off. And I don't know if they needed the captain to get to the isle. Like, did they always know where it was? Whatever. Nick Horth, you're cool. We're cool. And they
definitely had an idea of what was going on, right? And I think there might be something to be revealed later that helped the witch hunter to figure out where they were going. And this is definitely something that was talked about earlier. It's like, oh no, we're good. I know where we're going, right? No, this is the direction that we need to go. That was mentioned a couple times, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And even if it wasn't, I can pretend that it was, because that would make sense, given what we know about the book. And so they ride the hand in a no less more comfortable... Underwater. Not a more comfortable ride in any... The soothing tides do not lull them to sleep, but it's still just a bouncy, rough ride. But they, I guess, make it to the island. There's nothing else to say, really. They just hit ashore and climb on out.
Wham! Oh, we're here.
We're here. I found it. It's a montage where they overlay a sea map, and it shows you the ... until they hit the X, and then where they're at.
There's just this really crawling hand across the map.
Well, I like to think it's more of an octopus that does one of these.
I like to think it's a spider.
Well, I'm sure you do.
We do
great
know this
radio.
like cool thing has got a like volley gun attached to it, which blows away a bunch of skeletons.
Yeah.
They like close ranks to defend the necromancer.
There apparently is a lot of storage in this thing as well. There are other things that end up coming out of it later that were not necessarily talked about before. So it is not just a means of transportation. It's basically like
a tank.
A tank, yeah. It literally what I was going to say. It is a very defensible, submergible, mobile tank. Yeah. And so it is living up to the reputation that Master Boros was giving it
despite
in
all
the introduction,
odds.
despite all odds, yeah. They end up on this island of a sort. It basically sounds like they've hit a shelf, and the shelf is in shallow water, and then they come upon this just giant sheer tower of rock, I think is the best way to put it. It doesn't seem constructed. It seems more of a natural feature, but no seams, no grips, no nothing.
Inscriptions, though.
Yeah, inscriptions. And Varen pronounces this the Latchkey Isle.
Sure looks like it.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about these inscriptions.
So the inscriptions are written in a language that nobody can understand. But
Did you say nobody?
Nobody.
Man, God, why they're gonna have to turn around and go home then?
Exactly.
Game over.
And Varen is convinced that Shev is going to be able to fix this problem, right? Master Boros first goes at it with this like explosive that he pulls out of the hand somehow.
Which doesn't do anything.
Which does nothing. He's like, this will blow up a whole city gate. And it does absolutely nothing. Not a mark whatsoever.
Because it wasn't a city gate.
It wasn't a city gate. You're absolutely right.
Right.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And as they are looking at it, Shev starts to have these words form in her mind. And she starts to recite a phrase. She makes a reference to a figure called the Prince of Cats. And as she recites this phrase, there is an opening that appears within this sheer tower.
If I knew the Cats musical better, this is where I'd make a Cats joke. But I don't.
Memories, something,
Yeah.
something.
Mr. Mistopheles, is that him? Is that a
He's
thing?
in there, yeah.
Nice.
I got nothing.
Something
Sorry.
in my
Nice.
mind. I don't know.
I feel like you're our musical guy.
I think
Yeah,
Paul
but
was the guy for
Andrew
this.
Lloyd Webber, I don't know.
Fair.
Ooh.
If it was Phantom of
Oh,
the
wow.
Opera, maybe? I don't know.
All right.
At any rate, phrase spoken, Prince of Cats acknowledged, and a passage opens up in this cliff face,
Yeah.
and they're able to enter the Thieves
underworld.
Paradise. Yeah, the Latchkey
Right.
Isle.
Yeah. And so this is our first glimpse of this underworld. And the Latchkey Isle has been described as the Thieves Paradise. So it is the underworld for good thieves, right? So not morally good, but those who have given their devotion to this deity that is the Prince of Cats. And so it is an underworld devoted to larceny and theft and
Second story men.
Yeah.
Is one thing that I like.
Yeah.
I really like that phrase. Yeah.
I don't even. What does that mean?
People are going to break into the second floor.
All right,
Yep.
cool.
Gotta be able to climb.
So basically, again, rapscallions, right? This is a paradise for rapscallions.
How many more words can we come up with that apply to the... Nah, don't later. I tell you what, listeners, send us in more great thief-related terms.
And so this is paradise for Shev, right? Up until
Supposed
this
to be.
point, she is constantly just looking for escape, just looking for escape, just looking for escape. The tower opens up, they walk in, and it is every gorgeous, beautiful, intricate, incredibly constructed building that you can imagine that somebody would look up to the top and say, I bet somebody rich lives there, and I think I can break it. That's basically what my understanding of what
Yeah, it's
this
just
was.
chock full of targets. Like you're just walking down it's palaces and castles and... I mean,
From every age,
and-
like, so this is an old underworld, right? So that was the first thing that struck me, is that this is not a current underworld, is like just showed up 100 years ago. This has been in existence for thousands upon thousands of years.
probably for no other reason, because like it seems like it's not the oldest profession, but it's probably one of the oldest professions, right? Like it's one of the like oldest. So you can envision a scenario where like history's thieves like aspire to go here.
And as they approach this, Shev starts to get this feeling of freedom, this feeling of adventure into what's going on.
And me too, right? I
Absolutely.
want to go rob some buildings.
Who doesn't?
Okay, don't. I'm just kidding. That's just.
I'm here right now. I guess I'm going to do this one.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this building that I could take home.
Okay, well, watch out for the traps, and think of anyone you know in this world who would be more likely to trap their stuff than me, right?
Yeah,
Like this guy.
Yeah.
I dare you to try. So as they're exploring this underworld full of magnificent buildings and structures and things like that, they come across.
So,
Yeah,
do you mind if I just give?
I do mind. No, I'm just kidding. I do not mind.
So they enter this underworld, and then Varen starts to say, "Oh no, it's over here." Right? He's starting to have this unerring sense of direction, which is an odd thing because everything is kind of reshaping and moving as they're walking through it. But we have Master Boros, Taviat, Varen, and Shev entering into this underworld as live people, and Varon somehow has this compass. And we've started to understand at this point that the thing that's in his sack is a book. And this is starting to I don't know.
shed some light on that, like things aren't on the up and up with our Borg.
Yeah.
Baron,
And he
you know?
keeps
Progressively
seeming
seeming
worse.
like sicker and keeps blowing it off. You know,
Yeah.
either him specifically, or his bodyguard being like, "Don't worry about it; it's not your problem," or he like threatens, you know, puts his hand on his pistol and says, "Mind your own business," you know, thief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shoots you in the face bone.
Direct quote. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not really good at dialogue.
Not a great leader.
Yeah. But they follow his lead into this city, I guess you'd call it, full of these amazing structures, and they do come across these two. I'll use the word characters. They come across these creatures that they've never seen before. They are described as Cacosphinxes, which is weird because they literally just previewed a different Sphinx type thing, and that is not what these are.
That's not what they are.
Yeah.
Yep.
You guys got to put your heads together. Yeah.
They go into this plaza and there is a wall. They can't go any further, right? And these Cacosphinx are statues. They're absolutely beautiful statues of these gorgeous feline features. So
Bite of a cat, head of a person.
exactly. And so it is exactly the miniature that we see, but the heads are people instead, at least to me, to my understanding.
You're talking about like,
And there was a
Necrosphinx,
male,
or-
no, the
new one. I'm talking
then-
about the Warcry one.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a male and a female. And there are these statues that are standing there and just absolutely gorgeous. And as they approach, they start to come to life.
Sure. What do they talk about? I kind of forget.
What they're talking about is just, well, hi, you're alive and you're in our underworld. What's going on?
That's weird.
Yeah. We haven't seen some of you in a while. And they keep talking about how bored they are with Varen and Taviat and Master Boros. But they keep looking at Shev and they're like, you're kind of interesting. And they're like, we should just get rid of you because you're not supposed to be here. And then all of a sudden the floor starts disappearing.
And they both said, okay.
Yeah, basically.
We are, but man.
Yes. And the floor disappears and they fall into this like extraneous chute. Yeah. You know.
They fall far
Slide.
enough that it should kill them. They should, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
And they end up splashing down. And
Is it? Do they end up in this? Is it a subterranean cavern type thing? This is where I was sort of lost in the description. A little
Yeah,
bit.
I mean-
I know they fall through the ground
Mm-hmm.
to where? Like where? do they go?
logically, they should be subterranean.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody says something to that effect. They're like, "Oh, we should be way underground." And somebody else is like, "But physics don't necessarily apply here, so who knows where we're at?" You know.
Yeah.
Direct
And I
quote.
think they even look out and it's like, now it kind of looks like we're up in the air or whatever.
Yeah. So
Everything's all topsy turvy.
they appear to be in a passage that is high above a city,
Mm.
even though they are completely underground. And Varen points to a tower in the middle of the city, and he's like, there.
That's where
That's
we gotta
it.
be.
But the interesting thing is that Shev looks at it and goes, that's got to be where we're going, before he points it out. So there's some, like, Shev is starting to have some sense of direction in what's going on in this underworld. And so her suspicion is verified by Varen, even though she didn't say it out loud. So we're starting to have some changing of the guard here as far as who knows what's going on and how well.
Yep.
And
And they set off,
yeah,
heading towards this thing, and they're going across a very, very big bridge, and it's got these flagstones. Some of them are big. They appear to be interlocking. And this is where, and they know that they're specifically going into a Thieves Paradise underworld where it is like, you gotta solve all these traps and go. And so, like, as a reader, like, well, obviously, like, something is gonna be a pressure plate here. Like,
I know where
there's
you're going
Yeah.
when you die.
Yeah, yeah.
Tomorrow.
No, rough. And then, unsurprisingly, Shev steps on something, and she, like, with her elven or, you know, whatever treasure hunter senses, realizes, like, I felt a slight vibration, and throws herself clear, and the whole thing dissolves into a bunch of, like, spinning. You know, all of a sudden, instead of being a bridge, it's a bunch of, like, floating platforms. Basically,
a
they got
platformer video game puzzle.
yeah, they got a Super Mario this thing across.
Whoop,
So, yeah.
whoop. And they do, no, but so they realize that they have to get across this bridge, right? And so they make the attempt, but it becomes very clear that, like, I mean, Varen's in no condition to do so.
No.
Taviat is not a graceful gal.
Yeah.
And so they're having, obviously, trouble. People are, at some
Boros
point,
is
like,
hanging upside down.
yeah. Someone gets knocked by another platform and they're about to fall off and to their doom, and things are looking very dire. But when out of nowhere, undead thief Spider-Man appears. Because isn't he shooting like hook shot, like ropes and stuff to people? Yeah.
Hook shot.
I mean, you could go with Undead Thief Zelda. I mean, he's got the hook shot.
Yeah, he got the hook shot. That's true.
This is a video game. So.
Yeah. At any rate, so this guy comes out of nowhere and starts saving them and ferrying those who can't make it across themselves across the other side of this bridge. I think Chev obviously can do it by herself, right? She does it okay.
Does. She does
She
not
needs
very
to be
gracefully.
told
Like
it's
she,
possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
She doesn't have the
you
confidence.
just gotta believe in yourself. But she like makes a jump. And she's like, I gotta do this perfectly. And
It's a leap of faith kind of thing.
She like jumps and she
Yep.
doesn't do it perfectly. I'm like, well, by your logic, you should be dead. Nope. But she like hits the edge. Ouch! That hurts. I'm hanging on. And she makes it away all the way across. But she's like, what about my friends and this new person who turns out to be Jacques Villegrancier, Grey Jacques.
I'm so glad that you had to say it and I didn't have to. Yeah.
Grey Jacques is like, let's get going. She's like, I really shouldn't turn back on my friends. And he's like, well, what are you going to do about it? She's like, I can't do anything. He's like, okay, well, I'll just save them all. And so he
Zoop.
he jumps back and saves them all, which is okay. So then they're all
More than
back
okay.
together again.
Super okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, okay, from a storytelling perspective. It was weird to have this, like, for me, it was weird to have this character who just popped in and, like, I'm going to solve all your problems. I did it for you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah. So I'm the main character of this story now.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting introduction to me because this is a dead character, right?
We don't know that initially, right? Like, it's not, you might have made that guess. But it takes a little while to, kind of sort that out.
Yeah.
Because they do
but
introductions after the fact. But
This is an underworld where that has like a specific population that's catering to, and this is one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing is this undead person, right? This ghost, this spirit, is not under the control of Nagash, right? He is living in his heaven or hell, whatever you call it, right? So this is the first example that I think that we've seen where we're introduced to a specific character who is living, enjoying, and breathing, as it were, in their underworld. So that was a cool, specifically was a very cool moment for me.
Yeah.
Because you get to meet a character who lived their life believing that this is what's going to happen to them. And when they died, this is what happened to them. And he turns into this like very happy, jovial character with this slightly morose tinge because he has this understanding that Nagash is coming.
Yeah,
right?
Think of Ghost Errol Flynn, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Swashbuckler to the hilt.
And it was a really cool moment to have a character that was introduced and dead to give you really a great understanding of what this setting is.
And I'm surprised
cool.
it took us so long. I'm not saying he's the first one because I haven't read everything, obviously, but like it's the first one I think that I've read, and I'm surprised it took me so long to come across a character, like an example of what it means to live and exist.
That's a good point.
Like not even Tamara, like that. She was alive and she was dealing with like her skeleton brother, but that's not exactly the same thing.
But we see her when she's alive, and then see her continue her quest when she's dead. This person is completely dead, completely living of their own will, completely enjoying on life, right? Like, this is a fully realized character.
Yeah, and what didn't occur to me is the how hard it was to differentiate when you're in an underworld who was dead and who isn't. The fact that like they didn't know until they were basically told, and I guess we as the audience as well, that like he had to introduce himself for them to sort of realize that he was a dead guy there. Like he very well could have been alive for all they knew.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the concept that really intrigues me, right? Like, because that's where you have the idea of the dead and the undead living together, and maybe nobody knows.
Mass hysteria.
Right? Like, this is where the idea of the dead and the undead, the living and the undead, living and the dead, living in harmony, totally makes sense, right? This guy is, and I'm going to use again, the definition of a rapscallion, right? But he's just loving everything that's going on. and enjoying everything. And he's happy, right?
And how rare is it that you come across a happy character in any of these books?
Exactly,
yeah,
right? The
that's
first
a good point.
actual genuinely happy character that we have, and he's dead and loving it.
Well, and immortal no less. That comes up pretty like throughout the book. There's different points where he's like, yeah, no, I mean, I can do that because I can't die. Like you don't have. I mean, because I'm all that which is dead can never die.
Yeah.
But like you guys actually have something to live for.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say that like he's 100% reckless.
Yeah.
Like, he makes a point a number of times as we go through, like, hey, like, yeah, but if I fall into a buzzsaw, it super hurts.
Still
It
hurts.
sucks,
Yeah, I don't want that.
Like, no, thank you.
And then Paul Lutz, I think he makes the reference too that like they sort of realize that this maybe can't last forever. Like it's pretty well hidden. That's the very nature of this Thieves Paradise, right? Is that it's a hard nut to crack, but no one's under the illusion that like it's an inevitability that it'll persist, especially with what's going on with the rest of the realm.
And we see that as it progresses. Like, the next they move on once he's rescued everybody. They move on along this pathway, along the bridge, and they come to like, the city proper or the complex proper. And in the progress of that, there's a shadow kind of passes over, and everything becomes very melancholy. Like it's everything from like his attitude and just the general feel of it. Like it's a sunny day where a cloud comes over, but not just a cloud, but like a cloud that brings with it like a spiritual, foreboding. And that is the idea of that, like Nagash is circling, like this is going to be mine soon. Yeah, coming for you.
Well, even like they talk about how they're bird singing, and like like you hear this like active, beautiful everything, and when the cloud comes, it's silent, right? Sad. Just nothing. So they eventually make their way to this tower, right, where they know that this chamber exists. One
of like 1,000, though, no less, right? Because it's full of traps. They know it as the Tower of 1,000 Doors. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, but even as they arrive at the base of the city, Varen's like, there it is, and there's like this obvious kind of light filled structure at the top of a tower or something like that, and he's saying like that's where we need to be. And even Shev, I think, is like, yeah, it seems like a pretty boss place to be. So like we should hit that up.
Well, the video game highlight of my destination, like the arrows pointing me there. At
this point, I think we know that the book that Varen is holding on to is a tome.
Yeah.
And the tome is a tome of a character called, I believe, Valagar.
Yes.
Sorry, that's important.
First among the Amethyst
Archmage? I don't know. So we know that this is a tome of Valagar, and we are seeking out the phylactery of Valagar. So there's some connection there that we know. Like, Varen is seeking this thing. He's getting some kind of direction or something from this tome. And he is getting more and more sick, more and more wild and uncontrolled.
Yeah, it hits this point a lot. Like, there's no way you're going to miss this. It's not subtle. Like,
Oh, is he just not feeling? He's not feeling good.
I mean, every time it comes back to him, like, oh, it looks like he can barely walk or whatever. Like it.
But he keeps walking.
Yeah,
and then he can barely walk again. Though, They approach this tower, and as things get worse and worse, like in terms of Varen's declining health, they do end up approaching this tower, and it's
Is it Varen's spire?
I hope so. It should be. And not only is there the shadow that's sort of descending, there's also a thick fog kind of rolls through the city as they're navigating this. I don't know if city's the word, but this place. And as they're sort of approaching, they realize that it's a pretty trapped area, and they have to be careful. And they're making this slow approach. But what comes out of the fog? But a bunch of skelly dudes again out of nowhere. How did they come up through the bilge pumps again? I don't know. But it turns out they've been tracked by that necromancer Kraus from before.
There's a little bit of a weird moment here where they're preceded by this smell of like awful rottingness. So I was like, here come the zombie. Nope, the bone guys.
Skeleton, clean, dry bone, being attacked. But
I don't know if they're dry. I think that was the idea, is they're underwater, so they smell musty and like
it did specifically reference that they had like barnacles and seaweed on them. So you knew that it was these ones.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. So now I look like the dumb one.
Just like we planned it.
As nailed it. Always. But they realize that, all right, well, so they have to like navigate and avoid and fight their way through this skeleton army with the necromancer there, because they're basically on the cusp of this tower and they're trying to get inside. And so they bum rush the door. They're fighting skeletons left and right. And Greyjock thinks that he can like pick this lock basically to get into the tower.
This is a fun
And
moment.
it's got a bunch of different like components, and so he's got
3 different locks.
Yeah,
And he's got picks
different
going
pins
on
and picks
like,
and things. And at one point he says, "Hey, Chef, come over here, put your hand right here. Do not move."
Don't be bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, under threat of death for everybody. And so she's sitting there. She can feel the tension, and so she's sweating as he's picking one lock with one hand, and then he's picking another lock with another hand. Ambidextrous lock picking over here.
Yeah.
But
Whistling all the while.
yeah, he's
enjoying
having
himself.
a great time,
Yeah.
living the dream.
As Varen and Master Boros, etc., are fighting off this necromancer, right?
Mhm. Not very well. I might
No,
add. They're getting
not,
overwhelmed.
not very well. But they
Shooting
eventually
it.
do end up opening the door and fall through, right?
Yeah, and
things get real bad.
Yeah.
Right? Like it gets bad times. There's something where she, in desperation, like grabs Varen
yeah,
and like just dives through this door.
yeah, because they get separated from everybody
and
else.
it's clear like Boros and Centaviat are going to be overcome, and so she's like, we got to get out of here. Like this big crazy necro flame thing is getting thrown around.
Mhm.
And so she like dodges under one of those in the process of diving out of there with Varen.
Yeah. So this necromancer, like, he is some like hot stuff. Like, he is an overwhelming force.
So the necromancer's
So
your
hot
guy
right now.
then.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, like, there is no chance of Varen fighting him off.
Mhm.
They tried on the ship, failed miserably, right? They tried in this underworld and just failing miserably. And the necromancer starts shouting at Varen about how he will not give up his seat, right? He will not give up his power. So there is definitely at this point very clearly this rivalry going on between Varen and this necromancer,
Mhm.
right? And Varen seems woefully unprepared for this eventual duel.
Sure. But for the time being, though, they've escaped. Shev and Varen
Yeah.
have escaped into the tower with the necromancer sort of hot on their
Mhm.
heels.
As they enter into this tower, they are forced to flee into one of the doors.
Yeah, basically. One of the 1,000 doors of this tower of 1,000 doors.
So Varen and Shev fall, and they end up on this just cold ice shelf, as
Mhm.
it were. And there is no exit except for a door like halfway up the wall.
Yeah. This weird ice cylinder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Shev notices like a little trickle down the wall.
Sure.
Yeah,
Surely that's not.
that's
relevant.
weird.
Well, no,
Yeah.
her name is Shev, not Shirley. But she realizes, all right, well, we need to get to that door, and there's a time limit, right? This place is melting down around us because of the trickle.
And she looks down in the ice, and she sees an eye.
Yeah. Big old something under the ice there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a heart cracking. I don't know.
Full circle.
So basically, she has to drag this almost comatose Varen across the ice shelf and try to get him up this ice cliff
Yeah,
thing
right.
up to the door. All the while, the ice is sort of cracking around the big booming like ice cracking sounds that you hear. They're trying to find handholds up this
She's
wall.
using her dagger as an impromptu ice pick.
Ice
I'm
pick,
not
yeah.
sure how Varen is going up. It doesn't get super into that. But like she's healthy and desperate.
She's got him in her teeth, actually.
But at one point, like she loses her grip and he grabs onto her and somehow like keeps her from falling. Real quick.
Desperate strength.
Yeah, right. He's just
Yeah.
using his pistol. But anyway, like eventually the ice all melts. The creature's down below, eyeing them with his, meter-long teeth. But they are able. It's a tight thing, but they're able to eventually climb up the ice shelf, make their way to the exit door, roll on out of there, and they find themselves in this tower with sort of a spiral staircase up to infinity. Flanked by thousands and thousands of these doors.
Mhm.
Varen still in really rough shape, and they are able to take a breather for a hot second, and they find themselves amongst all these doors because it's a tower of 1,000 doors. And Shev does some exploring a little bit while Varen, I think, sleeps or something.
Recovers.
Yeah,
I
he's
think,
recovering from
Yeah.
the attack.
Yeah.
Sleep is not the word. Recovers from the attack. And as she's walking through, she sees all this wide range of widely disparate types of doors made of different materials and sizes.
Gorgeous, beautiful, exquisite
Yeah.
designs and everything.
I don't know if we glossed over this, but initially he's like, you fled, you coward, you're trying to, get me farther away from my prize.
Mhm.
And she kind of talks him out of that, and it's helped by the fact that he's so spent
Delirious,
and
yeah.
wasted.
Yeah. And so she's walking through these doors,
Yeah.
inspecting them, and she eventually comes to this door.
Well,
And
she's like, there must be, I know I'm on Thieves Paradise. Like,
Yeah.
there is some logic to this. Like, there's something I must be missing.
If it were random, it wouldn't be a paradise because nobody
Right.
wants to deal with the
Like,
randomness.
it's a puzzle. I'm supposed to be able to solve this. So she sits down. It's like, I got to think about this. She gets frustrated, right? Like, she's like, I'm just not be able to figure this out. Sits down, clonks back against this door, and ow, something poked my head. Turns around, and it is a gem that is known as cat's eye. There actually is one of these.
Yeah.
This actually exists, but this one is blue. In our reality, it is amber and black. But anyway,
Like an actual cat's eye.
yeah.
Yeah. Nick Horth, what are you doing?
Come on, man. You could have. Anyway, but yeah, it's fine.
So she's like, this is it, right?
Yep.
I know this is it. Prince of Cat's Eye, this is the door. So she goes back to get Varen. And he's still passed out, right?
Yeah.
Recovering from what's
He's
going
like
on.
kneeling and appears to be praying or something.
Exactly.
Like that. Yeah.
And the book has fallen out.
Mm-hmm.
And so Shev picks up the book and opens it up, and it's just complete gibberish. She can't understand it whatsoever, right? And she keeps looking at it, and eventually the words start to make sense. And then she starts to hear this voice in her head, and she becomes taken over by the spirit that's in this tome itself.
Yeah, it's clearly rifling through her thoughts.
Yeah.
Has a conversation like a almost dismissive, like, hey, you're nothing.
Yeah.
But
Second time that she's had a disembodied voice in her head, I might add.
Yes. But
She's got a type.
this one's a little negative. Though, a little.
Well, they all can't be winners.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just look at us.
And she's basically descending into this, like, just complete control by this voice. And Varen walks over and just smacks her, right? And, like, I want the book.
Yeah.
thief,
Right? Yeah, thief.
Like he's not no attempt to save her, but rather he's trying to
No.
reclaim his book.
Yeah. And in the process, knocks her through one of the random doors that is not the door that she needs to go through.
Yep. And they're falling as they go through this door, and she splashes down in icy, brackish, awful water.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible, but managed to, like, struggle her way to shore. Okay. As she's going through, there's this weird chunk of rusted metal, and then this, it looks like there's some hole in the wall. So,
But it's this gorgeous, beautiful treasure, like a thief's like a king's ransom and treasure, just scattered along everywhere. There is also this piece of rusted metal and this hole in the wall. As she continues to,
And it's not just a hole in the wall, but it's like a hewn hole in the wall. Like she makes it a point to be like, well, this is not carved the same way than any of these other holes or structures or directions have been. Like there's a inelegance to it. It looks like maybe it was drilled out, perhaps. Something's amiss.
Yeah.
But she makes her way down this tunnel because where else are you going to go? There's a tunnel, and there's a light at the end of it, so I'm going to check it out.
She literally has nowhere else to go.
True. So as she's sneaking down this tunnel, she finds, I guess, a lair is maybe a good term for it. There's bones, again, more and more treasure piled up, but then there's also some, like, mechanical structures and machinery down there, but not like what we've been talking about, but it's very ramshackle and sort of pieced together. Guys, you get where I'm getting at. Listener, do you understand what's going on? It's full of Skaven.
Yeah. And who else, like, how do you feel like, did it take until Skaven showed up before you figured out it was Skaven? Or
I mean, a couple sentences before when they start talking about what, like, the stuff that we're seeing down there.
I felt like I was kind of sniffing it out a little bit early.
Yeah.
But to that point, and this is one of the things, I'll come back to this, but, like, it bothered me a little bit where it was just like, it smells awful and weird, and there's these weird equipment, and I see this hunched figure, and it's moving with, like, more grace than I would expect, and it's got a tail, and now I have that, like, there's this stench of Skaven, and I would never, like, I would recognize that anywhere. I'm like, you literally did not recognize that,
Moments ago.
and it's a narrative piece or whatever, but, sometimes when it's used inappropriately, like, I'll like, I feel like you have a phrase which is said, I would recognize that anywhere, but you were building it up, and those two pieces didn't match together.
You can
very
use
well.
one or you can use the other. You can't use both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I had a frustration in a couple places with something like that, and this is one of those.
Turns of phrases.
So we're introduced to this engineer called Pitrick.
Yep.
Yeah, Patrick sounds right.
And he's a little bit cray-cray.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but aren't they all a little
Well,
bit?
so she was like, oh, I gotta get around this guy. Like, I don't want to deal with this. This is a headache I don't want to have. And she actually accidentally steps on like a broken mirror, makes some noise, and then, tucks and rolls behind something. And Pitrick like turns around and says, shut up, you. And he's talking to these hanging cages of like Skaven skeletons that are around him. So like, yeah, former buds. I don't know. That's not something Skaven have. Former
Underlings.
colleagues. Yeah. Anyway.
Work friends.
Yeah. So it looks like she's going to get out of there. Okay. And then all of a sudden she is surprised by what is clearly a
Storm Fiend.
Storm Fiend. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More
than one.
Yes. My favorite thing, though, is not only is he scolding these like skeletons, he's also calling down lightning to strike at the guy.
Yeah. He's like
electrocuting their cages. Yeah.
he's like, shut up or you're going to get the lightning.
It's like,
All right, you get the lightning.
yeah, like literally insane engineer, just like shocking everything. He just keeps threatening to lightning things as like a shtick.
So she bumbles into Storm Fiend, who then like captures her and turns her over to the Warlock.
We're pretty sure he's legit alive, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. He's not like.
I have no reason to think why it wouldn't be.
But we don't.
It made me consider the possibility. Like, could you like we've set it up as like here's a place where humans would go to in the world, but like, are there other beings that would end up here? And it's easy to imagine like elves. Like you could have an elf, or I don't think Age of Sigmar doesn't have like established half elves or whatever.
No.
But I can think of like order races showing up here. But what about Skaven? They love like they kind of like solve a problem or whatever, like the cunning ingenuity. And so I considered for a moment that this might be a Skaven ghost, but not. Didn't turn out to be. And also this is also representative of Skaven, where they kind of are able to break through the boundaries of how the realms are supposed to work, because they burrow through the realms. And so this is a Skaven who's here and who's not supposed to be here.
Well, and to that point, and I hadn't thought about the possibility of him being dead, right?
Because you're not as smart as me.
Well, because it just didn't enter my mind, right?
Sure.
Like, this to me was very much an order thing. So that's an interesting.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I think the reason it popped into my head more was maybe because I was getting a little taken out of by some of the things that were bothering me. So I wasn't like as wrapped up in it. And so that made me like a little more analytical and skeptical of some of the things I was seeing.
But as we go through this encounter, right, like it becomes very clear that this is not his heaven, right? This is his hell.
Yeah.
He's stuck in this place that he can't get out.
Yeah.
Right. And he's able to build these creations, but they're only about fighting.
And he's out of slaves.
He's out of slaves. Yeah. Like,
wicked bummer, dude.
I mean, what is the most tragic thing for a Skaven is to be the only one.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it is his version of hell. As like, he has no one to blame.
That's interesting.
If things are wrong, it's all his fault.
Yeah.
Right? And he's been stuck here.
You can't blame anyone else.
Oh, right? And so he's shocking. Like, he's literally driven himself insane because no one else can be responsible for his faults.
He's got to blame his dead
exactly.
fellow Skaven.
And so I was like,
right, Paul, I get you.
That's a really cool little like.
Well, and
I'm not smarter than you.
Game recognized game, and so because of that, he locks Shev up. Like he throws her up in one of those cages, and like all he wants to know.
It's your fault.
Well,
this is all your fault.
It's your fault, but all he wants to know is how do I get out of here?
Yes.
Like help me get.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, you're alive. How'd you get here?
Walk me through it, basically. And so he
walk it out.
Walk it out.
How many dollars is that? So he gives her the shock once, and he's about to really like land her a little bit. But she actually is saved, thank goodness, by our two nameless Caco Sphinx friends who
they
come.
Have names.
They aren't nameless.
Not to be named in this show. they come out of nowhere because they basically can. Like, they are the guardians of this place, and they come and just start wrecking house, and they free her from her cage.
So not appearing in this film.
With the thief, too?
With Grey Jacques.
With Grey Jacques as well.
Yes.
So, like, the three of them come to her rescue. I don't want to... He gets a name because that's a cool name.
And they do reveal that the Caco-Sphinxes sent Grey Jacques to go rescue Chev on the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This was an intentional action on their part. And they're like, you're as cool as we thought you were, basically. Right? Like, we knew that you had promise, and you were delivering on the promise that we thought that you had.
Yeah.
But, like, let's not get ahead of ourselves. These Caco-Sphinxes are, like, devastating everything, right? Like, there's
only 3 things, but yes.
Yeah, but, like, they have no chance of taking them out.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is, I don't even remember exactly what happened.
They pull the same trick on the Skaven as they did before, and they fall through don't they teleport them right out of there? Like, they use geomancy or something to...
Are they halflings?
Quite possibly, to ship those rats.
I mean, they're half people, half lion.
To parts unknown.
Totally, I'm going for
this
it.
Doesn't,
they're geomancer halflings.
I wish Eric was here. But they ship them to a different part of the underworld, basically.
Yeah.
And it's nice. I mean, now it's nice and quiet. We got this nice little cave.
Yeah.
We're all friends again.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hang out. And so this is where they sort of determine that, all right, well, we need to rescue the rest of our party. And the goal is we still need to get that phylactery as well, because this is actually a real existential threat for, like, the world. If this Valangar character, Valangar gets hit, he sort of gets, freed from his phylactery, or something bad's going to happen.
But there definitely is this question of Chev, she's like, maybe I can just go. Right? Like, this is a moment for me to leave.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right? And so I think this is an interesting moment because it feels like Nick Horth is trying to tell us or help us think of maybe this isn't her heaven, right? Because a real rapscallion would be like, well, I'm not trying to leave. And she is, right? So I think he's trying to imply a goodness to her character that may not apply to the people who are sent to this underworld.
She doesn't have that heart of gold.
Yeah.
But they have to come up with a plan, basically, to get back to that tower and save the day.
They spell it out elaborately and tell us every single detail, or not.
She does the classic trope of, I've got an idea and it might be crazy enough to work. Cut to black. Yep. And so we jump... Go ahead.
Well, we can say, let the record show, the Caco-Sphinxes are Theodocles and My Santa.
Oh.
Which are pretty cool names.
Pretty Greek. Pretty good.
The moment of her having the opportunity to leave... and then choosing not to is like one of the few, and this is a novella, so there's not a ton of room. It's a novella in Age of Sigmar, action oriented, so it's not like we're expecting to see a lot of character growth. This is the moment of, hey, it has this character developed at all. So this is where it could happen, and it kind of does happen.
Sure, it could happen.
Yeah.
And so she ends up finding her way into the Tomb of the Phylactery, right? And they enter into this storm vault, and Taviat
like
and Master Boros are being held by the necromancer, and Varen also is here.
Yep.
Right? And there is this face-off between Varen and the necromancer, but it becomes very clear now, as was heavily implied earlier, that Valangar has taken over Varen, right? Varen basically is no more.
Yeah.
He's just a Varen suit.
So there is this extended conversation back and forth between the two of them, and it is revealed that Kaus is this disciple of
Archon the Black,
and that Valangar was also a disciple of Archon the Black.
Yeah, they call him a Black Pilgrim?
Black Pilgrim, yes, which is interesting because that's the same term that they use for the Varen Spire. They're talking,
that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Good pull.
So,
strong work, Paul.
So that's an interesting kind of dichotomy that we have there. But the Valangar is just this much more powerful, impressive figure. Even though Kaus has everything going for him at this point, and Valangar's wearing another person's body.
Well, and we get a little exposition here. Like, Valangar is in the situation he's in for a clear reason, and it is his accusation is that it's because of Arcan the Black, and so by extension he hates these Black Pilgrims. He's saying, I'm here because Arcan the Black sold me out to the
Sigmar,
Azerian dogs, because Arcan was threatened. He thought I was going to take his place at Nagash's right hand. That's kind of a cool little, whatever. And honestly, I believe Arcan would do that.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
He's a scheming guy. I'd expect Manfred to do it first, but Arcan's not above that business.
Goodness, no. So eventually this conversation escalates quite a bit, and it does end up coming to necromantic blows, basically. Mm-hmm. The Kraus has a skeleton sort of backup, and he sort of sends them after Varen, but it becomes very clear quickly that Varen is no slouch when it comes to the amethyst or necromantic magics. He ends up taking over the skeletons at some point, all the while they're throwing like bolts of black energy at each other. Kraus,
he's like, this bores me.
Yeah. I was gonna say Kraus holds his own for a bit because it seems like Valgar was sort of toying with him, and eventually he just crumples him.
And at this point, it's referring to Varen / Valgar, right? Like, like it actually has a character name. Be like
exactly.
The way that he takes it over is not only a defeat for Kaus, but it is an utter obliteration of his existence as a necromancer, right?
He gone. Because
this is the first time that I think we've seen this. There's a necromancer, his name is Kaus, and he brings...
Yep, agreed.
He brings an army of skeletons.
To an amethyst fight.
To an amethyst fight. And Valagar takes control of his skeletons and sends them back against him and kills Kaus with them. Right? I don't think we've seen this before.
I cannot give you an example where that has occurred, although it does not feel...
It doesn't seem beyond realization or beyond possibility.
Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself with your skeletons.
Well, exactly.
I'm thinking of the end times. I think this happened in the end times.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah. But it is not only a defeat for Kaus, but it's a complete obliteration of his power. Sure. Right? He uses his own tools in order to literally, step by step, piece by piece, destroy the body of Kaus.
It does talk about how you got kind of quiet and you could hear metal on bone, and it was clearly this guy getting stabbed, and then he was just a pile of gore. Gore and rags.
Yeah. He couldn't.
He was a pile of beastmen.
Yeah, gross. But it's around this time that Sheva's like, oh, things have gone south.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I guess I just got to buy time. And so she's been hiding this whole time, watching it go down. Yeah. She pokes her little head out, perhaps peeks out her head, and calls attention to herself to let everyone know, hey, I'm here.
And the thing is, she's read her fiction. She knows that there is a villainous monologue.
Yes, exactly.
Basically, her plan is I got to rely on the villain's monologue.
Yeah. You got me monologuing. And so he starts monologuing. I mean, it's fair to say he starts going on about how, she was useful for a time.
I mean, she literally pops up and is like, oh, hey, again. Right? Yeah. She's like, hey, good to see you again. Sure.
Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah. And then talks about how Varen thought he was strong enough to be able to withstand, but all that made it was so much easier for him to be able to deal. Because he could just sit along and watch everything go on and put his, tendrils of control into his mind.
Sure.
And when he decided to take over, it was all that more powerful because he was strong enough to keep the illusion up. And he's
Illusions,
like, is this your plan? You show up, right? Are you waiting for something to happen? And lo and behold, Grey Jacques comes in. This was a great entrance too, right? This entire book, he's been super energetic and etc. And
because I'm clearly I don't understand this plan. She just and I was like, is she just gonna get close and use this dagger, which was referenced earlier?
Super cool dagger. We haven't referenced it at all.
Sting knockoff, but okay.
That has
Sting homage, but okay.
Yeah, I mean fields of gold, and
don't have to put on the red light.
Yeah.
Roxanne?
No, of course you're talking about the magical sword.
Okay, from, I knew you didn't.
J.R.R. Tolkien.
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 But yeah, I'm like, I don't know what this plan is. Like, buy yourself another 10 minutes before the end, and we're totally relying on this guy being willing to chat, which he is.
Yeah.
But then
he's like, you should have escaped, right? You should have left when you had the chance.
Yeah.
But then she's like, yeah, but we have escape. And boom, door gets kicked in, and Grey Jacques comes rolling up with our dear Skaven friends hot on his heels.
I love the line, too. He's like, I have your distraction.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
as requested, I have your distraction.
And I like to pick, I don't think it was described as such, but I like to picture him swinging Spider-Man-esque in through the doorway.
I thought it was like collapsing in a pile of like, I don't know.
Which is why I prefer my way. But the Storm Fiends can roll in, and the Warlock, Pitrick, as well as just shooting, warp lightning out of his Warlock claw, left and right. And so distraction it is. And things go wild.
This is happening right where Varen Valgar is like cracking up the phylactery. Like he's finished his sort of like, okay, like I've given my villain speech to you, and now I'm gonna totally like do the thing that I've been craving for, 500 years.
But I was willing to wait 20 more seconds.
But but it's cool. Like I'm finally here, but I got time. And then he's distracted from this. He's like, oh, I gotta do something about this, I guess.
Sure. And so they have a wizard's duel between the Pitrick and Varen Valgar, which lasts way longer than the Kraus fight, which was sort of surprising to me. But in a way, kind of fun. Like, I don't know. I liked that the Warlock, I don't know if this is believable or not, but I like that the Warlock was able to go for a while toe to claw with Varen as he's sort of shooting lightning bolts at each other. I mean, they're shooting magic at each other and stuff.
And this was an interesting thing for me, is that the Storm Fiends, right, were described in very specific detail. 2 of the miniatures out of the 3 that are available in the box set.
Is that what you meant?
This is what I was referencing.
Gotcha.
Right, like he specifically talked about the withered rats on the back to the point where I was like, oh, this is going to be a plot point. It didn't end up being a plot point, but like...
she tucks and rolls underneath, a Storm Fiend, and it's like, oh, there's a real gross, like, pseudo rat on the back of this. I thought she was going to shoot it.
Yeah, exactly. Shoot it and be like, but she doesn't do that.
She's like, oh, yeah, and he's there.
Yeah,
cool.
But they describe the armament specifically, and
one's got the gun, like the rattling gun. One's got the hook arm thing. Yeah.
Yep. But when they describe Pitrick, it very much is the old Ikit Claw miniature. Yeah, but that's no longer Ikit Claw isn't there, but he's shooting warp lightning. He has this gauntlet that shoots warp lightning. Right, like he very much is to me exactly that miniature.
Huh?
And this is
I
something
didn't take that. I took away because he's got a hand cannon and a pistol. So I was taking the one that was from the Island of Blood. Who's got,
that's fair. I could see that.
Leave.
But to kind of go back to my earlier point about a battle tome writer being very specific, this is very much an instance where you can tell that he's a battle tome writer because he's literally talking about the models themselves. Right. Mm-hmm. He hasn't created something. He's making his story fit models that exist in the game.
This is what I was referencing earlier. Is like, we'll come back to this. Like that makes sense to me that this is a Battletome writer for exactly the reasons you're expounding upon.
Yeah. So I really liked this chamber because it's described as this like beautiful marble chamber with all of these like treasures and weapons, etc., and the phylactery in the center. And as they're starting to have this second wizard's battle in here, it becomes apparent that Valagar is also easily able to take care of Pitrick, right? But during the distraction, Shev is able to go and free Taviet and Master Boros. Mm-hmm. And Master Boros, I don't know from where, pulls out this unassembled
there's
weapon.
The pile of stuff where they were captured. Apparently,
that's right.
All their equipment in the corner. And he's like, I got this. Don't worry about it. And so he's walking, and there's like gunfire, and he's just ignoring it.
He just walks
like goes over, starts digging in there, and then it describes some of the things he's pulling out. But basically he's like assembling a grenade launcher.
Mm-hmm. So as he fires this off, there's just absolutely destructive explosion.
Well, entertainingly, and they do a cool teamwork thing where Taviat hops over and use my shoulder to brace your shot. He's like, eat this, click, nothing. Ooh.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so then he like has to, clear the jam, and the villain is like, "Rah, ha, ha, you fools!" And then he clears the jam and fires it, and there's a big explosion.
So Valagar Veyron is not completely destroyed, but he is severely tested and wounded from this. He is, I think it said his entire face was burned, and like half his body is just destroyed. And it comes down to Shev and Varen Valagar, and she basically looks him in the face and stabs him in the heart.
Yeah, like they're like he's in mid-sentence or something like that, and she's like, nah, just kidding, boom, and then like stabs him with her fancy sting dagger.
And the spirit of Valagar gets sucked into the phylactery itself.
Oh, yeah, okay, so that's how like the final thread is resolved.
Yep.
Phylactery rendered, maybe not inert, but sort of complete and locked up. And
Well, so the phylactery is meant to contain his soul, right? But he had managed to keep part of his soul. So this is another example of where we have in the background, or Nagash has these Horcruxes, for want of a better word, that he has put parts of his soul in different places, and he has put parts of his soul into these different Mortarks, right? It's basically how he has this control. And this necromancer had gotten to the point of being able to put his soul into different places. And now, to my understanding, it is back in one, right? Or at least two of them have been contained into one.
maybe not all.
Yes, exactly. But that gives you an idea of the power that Valagar had that would make Archon be like, oh no, this guy needs to be gone, right? He had even gotten to the point of being able to split his soul into other objects in order to extend his life.
Sure. Gross.
So, yeah. At this point, they have the phylactery, and basically everything is put to a finish.
Sure.
And the dying wish of Varen, at this point no longer Varen Valangar, is that Tavia would escort Shev back to the city of Lethis and make sure that this phylactery is taken care of.
Yeah. And Tavia's like, yeah, as a final dying wish, I'll do that, because they had a pretty strong bond, and so she's pretty shooken up about his death.
Yep.
So she's like, yeah, as a final act, I will do that.
Yeah, she has a specific word for his like sword. I give
A sword oath.
Sword oath.
Yeah.
And she puts her sword in Varen's hands, in his body, before
And
she leaves.
It was that she would die before she let him die, basically.
Yeah, and she's like,
And so
I
she's
failed.
like, I failed.
Uh-huh.
And then he's like, no, I failed. And then
But she's like, no, I failed though.
No, but I failed more.
No, but okay. Okay, you did fail more.
No, I mean we're being flippant, but like it's
was a
trying to
poignant
make this the sort of powerful, emotionally resonant moment.
Yeah. Well, and it lends some like credibility to like the interactions earlier in the story, that like her demeanor and relationship with Varen is sort of showed throughout the story as sort of his caretaker and bodyguard. It was a strong bond. And scene fades to black as we cut to the epilogue, basically.
No, literally fades to black.
Yeah. Oh, doesn't
Because Shev is now in another prison.
Oh, yeah.
In a pit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
So she is returned to jail. There is very little sympathy and or praise for her actions, and she finds herself again under lock and key, under the order of Vizier, in jail. But she is visited again by another witch hunter.
With one arm.
But with one arm.
Which I totally forgot about.
Oh, I remember for sure.
It wasn't me.
Well,
it was the one-armed man.
I needed to know because I wanted to know where it took place, and I'm like, all right, well, depending in what state Toll is in, I'll know when this book happens. So if he was missing an arm, but that's who it is. Hannibal Toll rolls up, rocks up, and says, "Hey, look, you did us a solid. I knew Varen, and we've been told the story of what happened from you, from Taviat, et cetera, et cetera. So we believe you." Sure, I guess, but this is very important. You found yourself embroiled in very important matters.
Well, basically what he says is, you were sent out with a witch hunter, or an Order of Vizier agent. You came back, he's dead, and you have an incredibly powerful
Forbidden.
undead artifact.
Yeah.
Right? We have to put you in jail.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
It's policy. My
Yeah.
hands are tied.
exactly.
But maybe it can make use of you in the future, right? Like, isn't that the hook or hint later? He's like,
Yeah.
got a job for you. I'm in, you son of a...
So we might hear from Shev Arkless again.
Yeah,
I
I,
can
mean,
only
he
imagine.
specifically does actually release it. And he says, "But if I ever have to cross paths with you again,
Yeah.
you're really going to be in trouble, young lady."
For real this time, though.
I mean it.
No takesy backsies.
Finger shaking.
And then the end of the book.
Yes.
I'm glad we got that. I love when they do like the cameos at the very it's very Marvel movie esque, right? Like those scenes at the end.
Sure.
The Horth Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, Horth Cinematic Universe. I'm down for it. All right, let's do some. That's the end of the plot. You guys have any other plot stuff?
Nope.
All right, here. Let's do some standard questions. In what shape are the characters at the end? I still think Shev is under the Order of Azir's thumb. Like,
Yeah.
regardless if she's free or not, I think that she's still going to be called upon when
Yeah.
the need arises.
She's too entangled with them, but but the bottom line is she's kind of right where she was at the beginning.
Yeah, no worse off than I suppose.
Yeah.
So Varen is dead, right? I think we've established that.
Toth's dead.
Taviat and Master Boros are also under the control of the Order of Azir.
Presumably because they've been
Toll
embroiled in this
specifically
too.
mentions that they also have been questioned for answers. So Valagar is in the phylactery, perhaps somewhere else, but that's as much as we know.
Yeah.
And this to me is the saddest part of the book, is that they leave and they take the phylactery with them because the agents of Nagash know that it's there.
Yeah.
And so we leave the Thieves Paradise, and Greyjock and Theodocles know that the end is coming,
Sure.
right? Like, we don't see their end, but we know it's already coming. A necromancer has broken in,
Yeah.
right? They're no longer safe.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
And that was a super poignant end for me, like, for this amazing character of Greyjock, and like, it was, super poignant.
I was having a great time until you ruined it for me.
Sorry.
I mean, there's this point where Toll is like, she's like, "Well, is the phylactery safe?" And he's like, "Well, as safe as anything can be in these times. Like these are bad times we live in." But he does talk about, like, I've specifically hidden it where the followers of Nagash will not find it, and this implies to me that there's something. Like, because it used to be these, the engines, what are they?
Penumbral engines?
Penumbral engines that obscure things. So they still think they have something they can hide.
Double penumbral engines.
Double secret.
I have a theory. I think he might have hid it in the Midnight Tomb. And the next story is going to open with the Midnight Tomb being breached and Valagar being gone. Hence why I was saying, we don't know where the rest of his... Yeah. Because that's a completely safe place.
Is the Midnight Tomb under Lethis?
Yes, under Lake Lethis.
So not only did they let out Catacross,
they might have also let out Valagar.
Valagar. Oh no, Valagar.
Whoops, daisy.
What's worse? All right.
Yeah, it's a theory. So,
guys, tell me about who your dude or dudette was.
No, you tell us.
All right, cool. You just mentioned Greyjock, and now I'm feeling morose. He was my favorite because I'm a sucker for these brazen, brash, confident, happy-go-lucky characters.
All the things you're not.
Yeah, right? It's everything I want to be, everything I wish I was. I love me some Helios. Who was I feel like there was just one the other day.
The real Delios.
The real Delios. I don't know. It was so insightful, and it was such a... I feel like I learned something I didn't know of what it meant to be, like, dead. And what a great way to sort of experience it, to see that happy dead, like to see the peaceful, I mean, not peaceful, but like content dead. You see so much when you sort of look at the armies of death, the discontent, the unhappiness with their lot in life, especially with the Nighthaunt specifically when you're talking about ghosts. Sure. So it's rare to see that other side of that coin. And it was always so very hypothetical when they talked about what these underworlds looked like. And I had no concept of what it meant to like live there. They would say it in like battle tomes. They talked about it, in the Ossiarch, Bone Reapers, those two cities or whatever. But like now I know. Now I have an idea. And I'm sure not everybody's like Greyjock, but like it gives you that point. It gives you that introduction to the concept. And I imagine over the years we'll see a lot more of that too. Mm-hmm. So he's microcosm for that entire idea. Plus I just liked him as a person.
Strong choice. Paul.
I'm going to go weird here and go with the actual Thieves Paradise itself.
It's pretty weird.
The underworld, it really just, it struck me as an actual character in and of itself, right? Like, because it is so, to me, fully fleshed out, fully realized, and just approachable and understandable. I mean, and to the fact where it even has its own motivation, right? But between the two Cacosfinx and Grey Jacques, the city itself is able to have agency through the people that live there, right? Through the characters that live there. And the really interesting narrative hook for me is that the danger is that there is a treasure within the Thieves Paradise that no one knew was there in the Storm Vault. And this treasure that no one knew was there has now been uncovered. And the thing that kills the city is the thing that is the goal of every person that went to go and die and live their afterlife there, is a treasure that is so powerful and so dangerous that they can't let it be there, right? Like, it is literally the epitome of someone who would live there that ends up being the downfall of this paradise. And like, to me, that was just a fascinating twist and understanding of what it would mean to live in the realm of death in one of these underworlds. I just really appreciated it.
Wow, cool. Davey, character.
I am going with Varen. I'm going to tell you why.
Tell me why. That would be weird if you didn't.
Yeah, because Varen started this. He's got this. This is my purpose, and like I'm very focused on this. I'm gonna do this good thing. It's gonna be to get rid of this phylactery, basically get rid of this awful thing. I've kind of figured it out. I have this book, and it's gonna help me out sort this. It becomes clear to everybody else that he can't. He's like, very early on, you're like, this dude's not gonna hack it. Like, he's getting super sick. Like, before any even significant things had happened, he was like, he looks sicker than he should be. And anybody familiar with their fantasy tropes is like, yep, this dude's getting corrupted by this thing. I identify with the, like, I still got this. Everything's fine. I still got this. I can do this. No, back off. I still got this.
Which is why you're here tonight.
Yeah. And everybody else is like, you totally don't. And he's like, no, it's still cool. Believe me, it's still cool. So
get the crap out of my way. No, I've got this.
Yeah. Merely a flesh wound.
Yeah. I could feel where he's coming from with that. And he rode that bomb all the way down. So.
All the way down.
Well, but at the end, like, he does have an actual change of heart, right? Like, he wasn't able to be there.
Yeah, that's where I lost it. I'll never have a change of heart.
But where he's this straight arrow, these are the rules, and I live by the rules, right?
Yeah.
And then the last thing he does is he releases somebody else from his rule.
Well, yeah, he does and he doesn't. He says, like, no, like, I recognize the value of this. Like, my last command to you is follow this rule.
Yeah.
So.
But by the same point, this person has just betrayed what he held up to be, like, the highest thing, and he still trusts her.
Yeah.
Right? And that implies something more than what we, from the little that we had of his full character to begin with.
Yep.
So I appreciated that.
What are some things we learned about the mortal realms that we didn't know before? I didn't know that all the underworlds really hadn't been consumed by Nagash or Chaos yet. At this point,
that was my big thing. Yeah.
Apparently, I didn't know that the dead don't always obviously appear dead. Like I thought there would always be something that lets you know that they were dead, but apparently they look like the dead. They're just like us.
Yeah. Which raised some interesting questions, was because he was like, death's not final for me. It is for you. And I was like, well, it is unless they pop up in your position and then they're just where you're at.
Yeah.
And it's everything's good. So, but I think that transition is uncertain and inconsistent.
Yeah,
so,
agreed.
Oh, well, now you're making me think something interesting, right? Like,
we'll be the judge
finally,
of that.
first time for everything.
Is he telling them that the mortal realms is in such a place that people might not be going to their correct afterlife? Is that a commentary on what's going on right now?
I don't think so.
Right?
Super reach.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
I like the thought.
And then I learned to the degree that I guess we always kind of knew there was infighting, but I haven't seen infighting like this amongst the followers of Nagash. Just see Arcan with his followers sort of sabotaging other people.
Yeah.
I would have thought that Arcan was a little bit more secure in his position, but the fact that he's like, nah, that guy's, he's got to go, was news to me. Did you guys learn anything fun in this book about the mortal realms?
Well, the fact that you went from Shyish and into an underworld, and it wasn't this like, right? Like, it was you're at the gates of the underworld and you enter in, right? It wasn't as if you were moving from one plane of existence to another. You went from the land and you sailed across the ocean and there's an island and that's it, right? You still couldn't get in, but it wasn't a shift. Like what I've always understood it to be is that basically these little pocket realms, right?
Kind of like Styx, right? Like Nagash had to go hide in Styx for a while.
Yes. And the border wasn't a border. The border was distance.
A Barnes and Noble.
Right? Wow.
That was dumb.
Nobody in the UK is going to get
Even Paul thought it was dumb.
David, you learn anything?
I mean, I already mentioned a little bit, but for me, it was this idea of underworld being seamless with the rest of Shyish, right? Like, Shyish has these cities that have living people, and it has dead people all over the place. And the fact that you may or not, I mean, I think it makes me think that, like, if you could have been alive during the age of myth, like,
go kick with your grandpa.
One of the coolest things would have been to go tour the awesome underworld of the Mortal Realms. Like, let me go check out, because apparently, like, you can check these out. I mean, I know they're surprised, like, hey, you're living, how did you get in here, sort of thing. But if you have that ability, like, that's kind of cool to be like, oh, let me go sample what is the, like, cherished end goal of people who think in a particular way.
And then set up a trading post there.
Again, for me, and I think we've all kind of mentioned this in one way or another, but, like, the way that Shyish works, at least prior to Nagash controlling it all.
Boom.
Yep. That big old douche.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know we talked about sprinkling the listener questions in, but these don't really come up before. Josh from the Dogs of Warkai podcast, Fractal Rain, on our Discord, wanted to know, does the Prince of Cats feature in any other lore from the world that was or AOS? Oh, does he?
I think so.
Oh my god, I couldn't find it. What?
I think there's a reference in Soul Wars. Josh Reynolds.
The Lost episode. I know. I was just like banging on that right away.
In my defense, it was lost. So
yeah. But they do reference that it's the city of cats, and I believe there is a reference to the Prince of Cats by the little.
There's specifically a cat that is following around the girl, and, like, it is this, like, there's some reference that it might be this, like, lost god of cats.
Son of a Jesus.
Different author.
Yeah.
Different author.
Different book.
Which I
know.
love.
Yes.
So good. You guys are awesome.
Hats off,
Keep it up.
Nick Horth.
Yeah.
The stuff we live for,
yeah.
and Aaron didn't even see
No, he
it.
didn't even
This is
see
normally
it.
my jam. Well, it's because my searches are messed up and I can't run the search. All right. Tomb, King, Tristan, I had a couple questions. He wanted to know if Chev was bad trying to keep our PG rating here in this book. Do you think anything she did qualifies as a BA?
So here is my fundamental problem with this. Was that she was brought in for her specialty at being, I'm a thief, I'm a rogue, like, I'm the person you want for Thieves Paradise, whatever. And I felt like, so she read some runes, like she channeled the Prince of Cats. Sure. But other than that, it felt like she was just failing upwards through a lot of it. Like, it was just kind of circumstantially, like, oh, I got knocked through this door and it worked out okay for me. Like, I did not feel like, so I felt like Grey Jacques was awesome, right? Like,
they should have hired that guy.
But he was already there. And so it was like, here's this other person that we didn't anticipate having, but he is, like, made all our stuff possible. And she felt too passive to me. Too passive to be the bad A that Tomb King Tristan is asking about. I know she, like, theoretically came up with a plan, but because of the nature of how it's written, she doesn't reveal that to us or whatever. But, like, that was my main problem with her. It was like she didn't fulfill on the promise of why she was brought along.
Sure,
she could have been anybody.
Paul, do you think she was a BA?
Well, to clarify your point, like, to me, it's very much just that she didn't have any agency, right? Like, that it was cool. Like, she did cool things.
Paul and I are agreeing, listeners.
Yeah, but
mark it down.
I definitely agree that she did not have any.
It's a weird vibe in this room.
Agency to drive the story forward, and that was a little odd, right? And so, to go back to something I had said earlier, right? The difference between an Indiana Jones type character, right, And a Tomb Raider type character is, and maybe I just don't play enough video games, but in Indiana Jones, he does all his research, right? And he shows up and he's like, this is what's going on, right? We're going to go after this thing.
Does he? Are there large stretches of the Indiana Jones movies where he's doing research?
Well, he's a professor. And so, like, there's a lot of discussion with the museum. And he's like, I figured out where this thing is. I'm going to go get it. Right? And he figures out the traps, right? Like
Must be in the
expanded
universe, yeah.
Well, but in Last Crusade, his father has a diary that tells him where all the traps are to get to the Grail.
Okay.
Right? This is a part of Indiana Jones' character, to me at least.
Fair.
And so Hennifer Toll is very much that character. He's explored everything. He has a diagram of what's going on. He just goes in, gets the thing, but then he doesn't get it. So then he chases the person. Like, he very much is the agent that is driving the story forward, right? And when I'm making the Tomb Raider reference, it's more of like, this is a cool thing. I'm going to go explore this cool thing. And then stuff happens, right? And to me, at least that's why I'm calling it a difference between the two, because that's what my understanding of the two is, right?
Okay.
Now, Chev has an idea that there is this thing called the phylactery, right? Yeah. She doesn't know where it is. It's in this thing called the chamber of something, right? But she doesn't know where that is, right? Secret. And it's this agency where she's falling up, as a great description, into these steps forward. Yeah. And she has skills that allow those steps to happen. But again, it's, I'm just reading it and it makes sense to me, right? Yeah. I'm reading this book and now it makes sense to me. This revealed action that's going on. And so, as far as her being a BA, I would have to say that she doesn't really feel like it because Grey Jacques steals all of her thunder.
Yeah, big problem with this. Yeah. As much as a Grey Jacques is cool, it's a problem that he's stealing. Like he's doing the things that our main character should be doing, in my opinion.
My only final thought on that is if she was really that good a thief, she probably wouldn't have been caught in the first place. Oh, and so, honestly,
on you, Chef.
Yeah, they had to. They had to make gotcha. They had to make do with what they had available to her. So if she's a good thief, I hate to see what a bad thief looks like. But she had other good qualities. Maybe she just wasn't a BA. Did this book make you want to build any particular army? Did it inspire any sort of thoughts? I mean, it really wasn't an army book per se.
No, I will say the spark it had for me was when they were on their way to the island and they had described the concept of the island. I did not feel like it lived up to this promise, but the concept of the island, I was like, this is an amazing setup for a AOS RPG. Yeah.
I heard you.
Yeah.
I could be inspired to make a Warcry table off of this, for sure. Don't think I could be inspired to be an army, but like I could easily see this being Warcry tables.
I mean, it was very vertical, like this whole space.
There were bridges, there
lots
were
of ups and downs,
falls. There,
if somebody could pull it off, Paul.
That's true.
We'll see.
And this isn't my answer because I would never build anything like this ever. But like the reference to like the Meccano Arcanum hand and stuff is just another idea to that like mechanical cog4 type stuff. And again, I know it's not really important to me, but I know it's important to other people. So I reckon that it would satisfy some folks on that front.
I mean, I guess it is fair to say it would be pretty sweet to build Kaus with that huge undead kraken and the barnacle covered skeletons.
And then every time I saw him, I'd say, "Hey, Kraus, what's cracking?" Then he also wanted to know, man, Tristan, good solid questions. How would you convert a Chev Mini? I wouldn't. Short answer. Yeah. Anybody else?
Aaron would never.
I would never dream of it.
I'd have a hard time with it.
I think I'd be looking in the Harlequin range. Like there's a lot of dynamic, moving, elven sort of things going on there.
Okay,
I did make a witch hunter out of one of the Harlequins, so I could see that.
I do what Paul did, only way better.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
No, unlikely. Paul. If there's anyone who can challenge our Eric Oakland on the conversion skill, it's Paul. Here.
Well, thank you, sir.
I hope that drags you both down.
I have to say, I didn't really get a description in this novella that inspired me to do that, or I don't know if it's in there or if it's in Silver Shard instead.
It was, since it was told from the first person, you don't get a lot of description of her because she's the one telling the story. Even
good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was inspired when in Silver Shard to be like, I have an idea for how that might happen. I don't think I actually ended up doing it. But yeah.
Any final interesting thoughts before we review it for real this time?
No.
I don't know.
All right, cool. Give me some deep thoughts.
For me, I've referenced it a few times. Like I feel like it missed out on some of the promise. Like I was hoping for more of a heist. It wasn't a heist. I was hoping for more out of the Thieves Underworld. I think it's an incredible concept, but they moved through it. It felt like a lot by luck. Like it didn't feel like it. I was hoping it was going to be this thing where like, oh, they figured out this puzzle and we sorted this thing out. And they were either getting it because Grey Jacques was yanking them through, or they just were flubbing their way through, or the Caco Sphinxes showed up and they're like, yeah, we helped you get as far as you were, and we're also going to help you again. And that's how that's how the promise that I was hoping for was not delivered upon. That, and then there are some of the usual things with Black Library that, if I'm already like struggling a little bit, then they come to the fore. Like, somebody being like, this is a serious moment, and so I'm going to say enough. Like if we ever do a Black Library bingo, that's going to be way up there on it for me. And so I started noticing some of those things, which is not to say that I didn't enjoy it. I think I've said any number of times that short stories and novellas, they can benefit from, that they're able to, like, here's this idea we have, I'm going to deliver this in this small package and not have to, go beyond this cool idea I had. And so that brings it up where the other things are bringing it down a little bit for me. So I am going to give it 3 out of 4 crossed Ranald fingers, which we did not mention. There was a fountain, crossed fingers, symbol of Ranald, old world.
Oh,
yeah.
Lost on me. I love it though.
And Ranald was the
God of luck.
Ranald. He was the god of thieves, god of luck.
Yeah.
His symbol was the crossed fingers.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And that fountain showed up, so that had to have been a reference, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Help me out, Paul. Yeah.
No, for sure. I definitely enjoyed it. I've had this conversation recently about how I enjoy worlds more than I necessarily enjoy the characters, right? Like, as long as the characters are romping through a good world, I'll buy most of it. And I really enjoyed the world that he set up here. Lethis wasn't really expanded upon, but moving across the cityscape, going to the Sorrow Point, right? And then getting to the Thieves Paradise as well. Like it all very much like fired off images in my brain and like helped to sell me. And then, like, I picked my favorite character to be the Afterworld because it really did like just settle in. It's such a cool place that I could see any number of adventures happening.
That's fair. Yeah,
sure.
So I'd probably give it 7 out of 8 spider legs.
Oh, fair. So I a lot of Davies' cons or negatives resonate with me, but I'll say the things I do like is there were a handful of good characters. I mean, these sort of secondary characters. I really liked Grey Jacques. I liked Boros, and there were a few others that I wouldn't mind seeing again. He's really building a cast of characters that I hope he can sort of interchange and bring in and out as sort of necessary as he continues these stories, and I hope he continues to do so. I liked the things that I learned. It was informative. We talked about a lot of the things that we've discovered about a lot of the nature of death and underworlds and Shyish, and so I thought that was all very interesting and definitely worth the price of admission to reading the book. It's also worth noting that, like, given the short nature of the novella, we always talk about how, like, there's a lot of bang for your buck, or there's very little filler. Like, there was always something going on, and it moved from scene to scene to scene. It never really languished, which, sometimes Black Library novels can have those slow points, but this never really did. And so, like, this was very movie sized. This was very, very contained in the constructs of what, like, a film that you would watch, an action movie, like we keep referencing, Indiana Jones or et cetera.
Yeah.
So because of that, it is easily digestible and kind of a fun ride. And so I think a lot of that stuff overcomes, I think, some of the negatives that I do agree that David brought up. I'm just not going to say them again. So I do think it's worthwhile. And plus, I do just love continuing stories from characters that I know. So if you're going to make a sequel to something, I'm going to read it no matter what. So, like, and I don't regret having read this one because of that.
Yeah.
If I were to give it a number, let me think of a fun digit. I was trying to think when you guys were talking. I think I would give it 4 out of 5 mechano fingers.
What an amazing
Wow.
and innovative thing that you thought of all by
All by
yourself.
I'm so
Self-
impressed.
No help whatsoever. All right, guys, that was our review. I'd be curious to know what you listeners who checked it out, what you thought of the book.
Yeah, let us know. Like it's one of the most fun things we have is when the listeners give us that feedback.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And it's kind of the start of the new year. We didn't really talk about that, but like I want that to be a push, listener. I want to hear from you about the books that we've read. Well, and I guess pumping iron. I don't know. Maybe just did that. But no, yeah. But we'd be ecstatic if you told us what you thought about the book or the show. So let us know. Anything else?
Where would they let us know, Aaron?
Well, I'll tell you what. How about I tell you a little bit about this? It's time for our reforging, but Sigmar willing, we'll be back soon. Like, subscribe, share, or leave a review. Join us on Discord. Drop a tip on our Patreon. Anything you can do will spread the word of Sigmar farther than we can on our own. Chat with us anytime about your thoughts on Twitter at The Mortal Realms. Davey, where can they find you?
I'm at red_Zeke.
I'm Aaron, and I'm at Dos Asos.
I'm falling at PJ Shard.
And you can find all our Mortal Realms shows and content at www.themortalrealms.com.
Four to 5 mechano fingers.
Oh, I could do fingers.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a solid. I can't do it because you just did
Cut
it.
him
No.
out and pretend
Yeah,
that you came up
go
with it
ahead.
yourself.
I give it.
Yeah.
He's just a Varan suit.
He's a Varan pyre, soul pyre.
Cool,
Stretch.
You're right.
like a Varan suit would if you put it over your. I don't want to give up that sweet history of the weird story phase bumper from the early days.
Fair. Yeah, I agree.
The audience needs it.
One of Eric's iconic contributions to the podcast.
Which is where then I will say blah blah blah, all different types of doors. Aaron, edit this part. Pay attention. Stop playing WoW. All right, you're cool.
It's okay. You're just trying to run through more territory. Yeah.
Just level
It's
up
true.
more.
This
Level up more.
is a Griffin ride.
Yeah.